Back in the 80s and 90s, you would meet a small number of dungeon masters that would get really frustrated if players had their characters avoiding combat, avoiding traps, because a lot of that brings flavor to a gaming session. And without it, and if you don't know what you're doing as a dungeon master, and the players aren't really catching on to what they're supposed to do, it can turn into a really dead, boring session. So how does a game master make sure that if characters avoid the combat, avoid the traps, that the session just doesn't die and become boring? Well, you gotta remind players from the get-go that they have to bring their energy and enthusiasm. And if they're gonna skip combat successfully, if they're gonna skip traps, well then they need to do some more interaction. They need to try some more things. They need to make the session interesting. It's a team sport. The Game Master is not just there to entertain the players. Everybody is there to entertain each other, and that includes players entertaining the Game Master and entertaining each other through, interesting interaction and everything else. And if they bring that to a gaming session, even if they avoid the traps and the combat, it will be fine, and they'll have fun, and the Game Master will have fun, and it will remain interesting. Players will bring some flavor, and maybe as they try some things, the Game Master will have to improvise, and you'll find more flavor through that for that gaming session. That minority of Dungeon Masters that I spoke of at the start of this video, they didn't know how to handle things when, say, characters were avoiding traps and avoiding combat. So what would they do? They would rush the characters into traps, into combat, without giving the players a chance to avoid the traps and avoid the combat with their characters. In some cases, it would lead to arguing between the players and the Dungeon Master. Or worse, players that were new to the system, that didn't know how things normally went, they would get used to this and allow DMs to move them straight to combat and to traps without even thinking about avoiding it. What is sad is this. In 2023, from the TSR D&D games that I see being ran, and the 5e games that I see being ran, I see a majority of DMs rushing characters into traps and into combat. What is really weird is this. Unlike back in the old days, in 2023, I see some groups of players that can handle, role-play interaction, make the game interesting when they're avoiding traps and combat, but yet the Dungeon Master is still rushing them into combat and traps without giving them a chance to avoid it with their characters. It could be a case of monkey see, monkey do. That person's DM did it to them, right? Rushed them into traps and combat. So here they are doing it to their players. And they really don't know how to DM because their DM didn't really know how to DM. They don't know that if the players are there to bring flavor and they brought their energy and they're going to do their part, it's no big issue if they avoid traps in combat because they're going to try interesting things. But that DM doesn't know that. And his DM simply was doing it wrong. So that's how he learned the game. Maybe that's the case, or maybe it's something else that I am unaware of. Maybe. So Game Master, don't rush the characters into traps and combat. Have a talk with your players before a campaign starts. Let them know that they gotta bring energy to the gaming session. And if they avoid things like traps and combat and other things that bring flavor to a gaming session, then it will be on them to make it interesting. If not, it's going to be boring. And it's not your job to bring more flavor than is necessary from your end. You bring in the traps, you bring in the combat, you bring in the NPCs, you do everything that you're supposed to, and if they avoid that, get around that, they don't want to interact with that, well then it's on the players to make that interesting, to try different things, force you to improvise. And if they're not bringing that to the table, they're going to bore themselves and they're going to bore you. And you should tell them that they don't have to worry about threatening to walk away from your game if they're going to be like that. You should threaten to walk away from them if the players are going to be like that, right? Anyway, for now, take care. You know what you can do? You can hit the like button. You can share the video. Oh, and there's another button you can press. That one that lets you subscribe to my channel for more content. Oh yeah, there's that bell thing. You can press that so you know when I've uploaded a new video right away.